Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Stranger Things and in context to Dungeons and Dragons from a Dungeon Master Viewing's perspective. And we're on the Weirdo, and we are in Season 1, Episode 2. We are specifically talking about the Weirdo on Maple Street. And at this point, we're at the high school in Hawkins, Indiana. And, excuse me. And we're dealing with Nancy Wheeler. So Nancy Wheeler is at school and she's cozying up to her boyfriend, and her boyfriend is Steve Harrington, right? And Steve is Tommy. Steve's friends are Tommy Hagen and Carol Perkins, okay? And they are disgusting, hard garbage people. They are just the absolute worst, right? So Jonathan, Will Byers' brother, so at this point, Nancy is standing with Steve Harrington, and they're just having a good time talking to Steve's friends, Tommy and Carol. And Steve's like, hey, my parents are away. We're going to have a party at our house, right? So why don't you come, Nancy, right? And Nancy's like, I don't know, and then Tommy and Carol are like, what don't you know? Like, come drink beer, smoke, and do a bunch of like stuff that's going to get you in trouble with us, right? And Nancy's not sure, right? And then this is all interrupted by Jonathan coming up in the high school, in the hallway, and he starts putting up posters for his missing brother. So he's, very sad, and he's like just taping this sad little poster that his mom, kicked off on mimeograms, right? Very disorganized, very like lost pet, very much gives a lost pet energy, right? And at this point, Tommy and Carol are like, oh, your brother's missing, and start literally making fun of Jonathan and goes, oh, that guy's, he's really strange. He's a loner. His family is poor. They're just like really kicking down, like talk about punching down. Tommy and Carol are the absolute worst garbage people. They are terrible, terrible, terrible people, right? And Steve is their friend, and this is really interesting because Steve then gets this, you can see that Steve's like, oh man, I'm kind of a garbage human, but this girl I'm really interested in, Nancy Wheeler, she's like a human, right? Like she does what she cares about people other than herself. And you can almost see like the gears in Steve's head like clicking, and he's like, I don't care about anyone but myself. That's kind of terrible. And now that I'm looking at it, Tommy and Carol are kind of terrible. And I never really thought about this because I was never interested in anybody who really cared about any human other than themselves, right? And so you can almost like see Steve Harrington seeing his alignment is neutral evil, right? Like that he is incredibly selfish, incredibly privileged, and doesn't care for anyone else who is not incredibly selfish and not incredibly privileged. And he only cares about those people simply to give him company, right? And so Nancy feels bad, and she's like, oh my gosh, Will, plays Dungeons and Dragons with my brother, and she's putting this in her head, and she's like, and Jonathan is in a literally at a crisis point. He is at one of the lowest points in his life. His brother is gone. And these garbage humans don't care, right? Now, she's still interested in Steve, and the reason why is she realizes her best friend is Barbara, right? Like, Barbara is not a garbage human. She's a forgotten human. Nobody in the school cares about Barbara, right? Like, and Nancy's like, oh man, if I stay with Barbara, I'm just going to be forgotten. Like, I'm not, but if I stay with Steve, these people are garbage humans, but at least they have parties. At least they get invited. At least you could say no. Barbara never even gets to say no to being invited to a party. She never gets invited, right? And so you could see all this happening in Nancy, right? And what's really interesting is it's, Nancy knows Jonathan because Will Byer plays Dungeons & Dragons. So Dungeons & Dragons is the value point on Jonathan. right? And so she comes over and she leaves Steve Harrington. She walks away from him and is like, hey, can I help you put up some posters, right? And there's just this moment, and honestly, I really think that the Duffer Brothers made one of the reasons why they made Stranger Things is just to remind people what it was like in the 80s and how there are these junction points in our lives where we make a clear decision. Are we going to be a garbage human? Are we going to be a forgotten human? Or are we going to be a human, right? And I think that's the beauty of Dungeons and Dragons is it never forgets. It never forgets this question, right? And you can and they're stacked. Those groups are stacked in the alignment chart. Garbage human, all the evil alignments. Forgotten humans, neutrals. Everybody's, oh, neutral's cool. It's not. You suck and you're going to be forgotten. Nobody's going to remember you because you picked the middle, right? If you are neutral in life, if you think that is your alignment, you are going to be a forgotten human. No one will remember you because you didn't pick a polarity, right? And that's correct. I think that's the correctness, right? That's the correct reaction to that. Pick a lane, choose a role, be responsible for evil or be responsible for good, right? But don't sit in the middle. Nobody likes that. Nobody remembers those people, right? And then finally, am I going to be a human? Am I going to be good aligned, right? And so I think this, and I took a long time to describe all this because I think this is one of the most important moments in episode 2. It's a really critically important moment, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.